Well, if you haven't noticed, then you've been out of the country because the mainstream media has been courting satellite radio's Howard Stern all week as he promotes his new book, Howard Stern Comes Again, where he professes to have changed his crude ways. The Hollywood Reporter, the New York Times, all the morning TV shows. Howard had the floor.
I did not vote for Donald Trump.
Even NPR's Terry Gross gave the one-time master of terrestrial radio a one-hour chat.
Your interviewing approach has changed over the years. You go deeper, you have more empathy.
In therapy, I began to explore other ways of communicating.
And he has to some extent. Stern's new book is a collection of some of his most memorable interviews. Gwyneth Paltrow, Mike Tyson, Jerry Seinfeld, and Conan O'Brien.
Do you suffer from depression? I mean, are you medicated?
I'm medicated.
You are?
Yeah.
But tune into Stern's 4-hour radio show on Sirius XM, and you're still going to get a lot of ego-driven, sexually charged drivel, even though he says those days are behind him.
I'm still pretty miserable. There's still an angry guy in here somewhere.
And when the New York Post's Maureen Callahan dared to point that out, asking why he still makes fun of mentally challenged guests like Beetlejuice and berates his staff on air, Howard unloaded with an expletive-riddled tirade, accusing Callahan of being a hit woman. So far, she is the only reporter to speak up. The rest are sticking to Howard's storyline.
So what do you say to those folks who dismiss you as this vulgar guy?
I think if they read this book, there's a lot of human drama in these conversations.
Not to mention book sales. I have to say, I started watching a few of these, and there is something mesmerizing about this man. And I also remembered when he was on terrestrial radio, you could hardly miss him. It was easy to flip around the dial and land on him. I have satellite radio. I have it because my daughter programmed it in, but I don't punch it because when I do, I feel like I'm back to the old days where he still does a lot of that stuff. Some of the interviews he does are fantastic. They are absolutely wonderful, and he had some good things to say about, why Hillary Clinton should have come on his radio show, and perhaps she would have been president if he had. But this whole notion that he's completely changed, and all these interviewers just giving him the platform to say that, it's not true.
I think he's partly changed. I can accept that. It sounds like he's gone through some changes in his life, and he's not quite the crude host that he used to be. A couple of points that I want to make about him, though, is that how did he get to where he is today? He's building his new persona on this really horrendous act that he engaged in for many years. I thought that Terry Gross, in another part of her interview with him, made a really good point where she was saying, you helped encourage a whole generation of young men to leer at women in a completely sexual way and to get across the idea that this is how young men should behave in order to be cool. And I don't think he's really come to terms with that.
Yeah, his answer to that was, well, I was trying to be honest about how men think and talk, so I thought I was doing a service to my audience, which, it's sort of rationalization at its finest. The media loves certain narratives, and we return to them again and again. I don't know if this is something, Joseph Campbell, the myth guy, talked about back in the day, but the idea of, problematic individual acts is no longer the person they used to be. That story must have been written a million times. And this is a perfect case in point. Like Dan said, I'm sure he's changed somewhat. He's gotten older, things in his life has changed, but there's probably a fair amount of continuity too.
Yeah, people grow, they evolve, they change. Keep in mind at one point early on, he was describing what he did in his show as his persona. It was a shock jock persona. There's no indication that this new Howard Stern, newly revamped Howard Stern, isn't yet another persona to sell a different product. I think the salesman aspect of it is consistent throughout his entire career. This is just a different product. Is he as horrible as a guy as he always was on terrestrial radio? Probably not. I mean, his kids certainly don't seem to think so. Is he an angel now because he's suddenly been redeemed and he's found the right way? I don't know.
I challenge you to listen next week and come back and we'll talk.
Okay.
All right?
Compared to what? He's always been a racist pig to me, so I've never had any interest. So nobody can tell me about how great his interviews are because I don't care, because they've always been framed in that. And don't anybody write me about Robin Quivers being black. Yeah, she's everybody that's your kinfolk, not your skinfolk. Let me just say that. And so she's been a shield for him all these years. I mean, really, I find him so disgusting. So no doubt he probably has gone to therapy and something has changed. But here's what's happening. It's not that we love the narrative so much. It's that this guy is connected hugely to all of these media operations, which are happy to give him a platform. If he stood out there and said, I'm shaving my head, he'd get an interview. And, you know, that's built on the success he's had in terrestrial and now on Sirius. So good for him if he's able to parlay that and sell books. And he's fairly naked about that. But changing, you know, as some kind of, you know, human being, really, or someone seeing a story that really says something to you, no, no, no. Let me quote Auntie Maxine, reclaiming my time.
You know, it's interesting, when he was on test, remember he got into all those fights with the FCC, and the mainstream press covered him almost on a daily basis. He was always in the news because he was getting fined or sued, and he was always fighting about language. And now that he sort of totally disappeared from the mainstream media landscape.
Because he's not sanctioned like that on
but so nobody has been paying any attention to him. But now he comes back, and they're all too eager. I guess I was stunned that everybody wanted him as an interview. Everybody.
It's a relaunch. I think people want to connect with audiences that maybe they didn't connect with before. They see an opportunity to reach another group, and he's just another venue. I think both are using each other.
Excellent.
I think the only person I'm disappointed in is Terry Gross. Really, Terry? Really? You know.